Alright, I'm asking you, what if Dooku killed Palpatine before Anakin and Obi-Wan arrived? And again, the channel is right here, Star Wars Quill. This channel will be in the description below. You want to check out the original video for yourself. Alright, let's get started. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share if you want to see more reactions like this in the future. And again, the original channel will be in the description below. You want to check out the original video for yourself as well. So let's get started.
What if Count Dooku killed Palpatine before Anakin and Obi-Wan arrived? What would happen then? Let's find out. So in this timeline, everything would be the same until Palpatine is restrained onto a chair in the observation chamber of the Invisible Hand, Dooku's ship. In the original timeline, as explained in the novelization for Revenge of the Sith, the restrained Palpatine and Dooku had a brief chat before Anakin and Obi-Wan showed up. And in this short discussion, Dooku expressed his desire to have Obi-Wan turn to the dark side instead of Anakin, a desire that Palpatine quickly shot down, following which Dooku walked away to wait for Anakin and Obi-Wan to arrive. But in this timeline, something would happen right before Dooku walks away that would change the fate of the galaxy. And what was that? Well, to explain that, let's talk about the night Darth Plagueis died. It was the night before Palpatine was elected Supreme Chancellor, roughly 13 years before the events of Revenge of the Sith. Plagueis and Palpatine had been celebrating Palpatine's rise to power as the Supreme Chancellor in Plagueis' penthouse apartment, located in the Caldani Spires, a building which Plagueis owned. As the night went on, Plagueis and Palpatine drank a lot of Celestin wine, and eventually, the drunk Plagueis fell asleep. At which point Palpatine prepared to leave, but at that moment, when Palpatine turned around to leave, the dark side spoke to Palpatine in a way, telling him that this was the perfect moment to end Plagueis, and that is how Sidious killed Plagueis in his sleep. He did so because the dark side whispered it to him. And now, coming back to our story, as Dooku began to walk away to hide till Skywalker and Kenobi showed up, the dark side whispered to Dooku, "Betrayal," it told him. Dooku's mind suddenly pieced together a puzzle that he had not seen till now, and this puzzle revealed to Darth Tyrannus Sidious's true intentions. His master had no plans to share his power. Not with him anyway, Dooku realized. And then, in a swift motion that would have been nothing more than a blur to the untrained eye, Dooku ignited his saber and launched it into the transparent steel window behind the chair Sidious was seated on. The window shattered, and Sidious, having undone his restraints, realized what his student was about to do, but before Sidious could do anything, he was met with a strong force push from Dooku, which sent Darth Sidious flying out the Invisible Hand's observation chamber and into the vacuum of space. And as immediately as this happened, the safety measures of the ship engaged, and Durasteel shields soon appeared, protecting the interior of the ship from depressurization. All of this, from Dooku sensing Sidious's imminent betrayal to Sidious now lying in space, happened in less than a second. And in less than a second, Dooku had saved himself from a betrayal that would have led to his doom. Dooku knew that a human could survive for at least a few seconds in space. This thought brought a smile to Dooku's face, as this meant that Sidious would have just enough time to know what happened before he died. But the smile quickly faded as Dooku realized that, with the change in plans, he had no reason to stay and fight Kenobi and his arrogant former apprentice. Killing the two Jedi wouldn't achieve much, but leaving them alive, particularly Obi-Wan, might aid him, Dooku told himself. And so, with that decided, Dooku left the observation chamber. There was much to be done, Dooku thought. Meanwhile, Anakin and Obi-Wan were making their way over to the Chancellor. They both had sensed something a few moments prior, a surge of dark side energy before it was silenced. The two Jedi didn't know what this meant, but without dwelling on it, they made their way to where the Chancellor was and found the place empty. They then noticed that the windows of the chamber were now replaced by opaque Durasteel, and that a chair that should be there at the end of the chamber looked like it was ripped off from where it was affixed to the floor. None of this made sense to Anakin or Obi-Wan, but moments later, someone showed up to help them make sense of it. And the someone was none other than General Grievous. So the reason Grievous is there is because after killing Palpatine, Count Dooku had told the cyborg general that destroying the Supreme Chancellor was always the plan, and that he, Grievous, will need to take down the two Jedi when they arrive to rescue Palpatine. Knowing full well Grievous' tendency to flee from fights he couldn't win, Dooku had assured Grievous that he would appear as soon as Grievous engages the two Jedi, and Grievous, fully trusting Count Dooku, had now arrived to battle Anakin and Obi-Wan. So as Kenobi and Skywalker watched, Grievous made his way over to them, flanked by his Magna Guards and some B-1 battle droids. That was some rescue, the cyborg told the Jedi. But Anakin, frustrated at not knowing what happened to his closest friend, would ask the following: "Where is the Chancellor Grievous?" His voice filled with a rage not so befitting of a Jedi. Anyways, in response to Anakin, Grievous, believing that Dooku was nearby and ready to back him up, would answer, "It seems the Chancellor went out to get some air," Grievous would say with a miserable laugh that would be interrupted by coughing. This made Obi-Wan quite disappointed, both Grievous's attempt at making a joke and what had probably happened to Palpatine. Mostly what happened to Palpatine. It was now clear Dooku, who they had sensed was in the ship, had most likely thrown the leader of the Republic into the vacuum of space. And as soon as this realization struck him, Obi-Wan sensed something else. Anakin, his former apprentice, was angry. He too had no doubt figured what happened to Palpatine, and as Obi-Wan could sense, even without the aid of the Force, Anakin wanted Grievous dead. And moments later, Anakin engaged the cyborg general, and Obi-Wan too joined. Grievous, in the meantime, was expecting Dooku to make his grand entrance at any moment, unaware that Count Dooku of Sereno had already left the Invisible Hand. But to Grievous's credit, he did begin suspecting this not too long into the fight. But by then it was too late. His Magna Guards had been destroyed, the B-1s that were with him had lost their heads, and now he was fighting two of the best the Jedi Order had to offer, alone and with no way to run away. Grievous then considered surrendering, but that thought was cut short when Anakin's blue saber cut Grievous's height short by removing his head. And so, having decapitated the droid general, Anakin and Obi-Wan made their way over to the bridge of the Invisible Hand. They still needed to escape. As for failing to save Palpatine, Obi-Wan knew that it wasn't their fault. The moment Palpatine was taken from Coruscant, he was as good as dead. And Palpatine being taken wasn't their fault. They were nowhere near Coruscant at the time. But Anakin saw things differently than Obi-Wan. Another person close to him had died because he wasn't strong enough to save them. This is how Anakin saw the whole ordeal. Anyways, soon enough the two Jedi reached the bridge of the Invisible Hand, destroyed all the droids there, following which Anakin safely piloted the Invisible Hand down to Coruscant. It was a very happy landing, but neither Anakin nor Obi-Wan knew that at the time. So in the aftermath of all this, Anakin and Obi-Wan were again not blamed. They weren't the ones who let the Chancellor be taken. Instead, the blame fell on other Jedi like Shakti, and also to the Coruscant Guard. Also, soon after all this happened, the Senate moved to elect a new Chancellor. Bail Organa was seen as a prominent candidate in this, and as for Padme, seeing the state Anakin was in, she did not share with him the news of the pregnancy. And finally, as for Anakin and Obi-Wan felt that they shouldn't spend too much time feeling bad about the whole thing. But as Obi-Wan could sense, Anakin did not share the same sentiment. Palpatine was a close friend of Anakin, so it made sense. And Obi-Wan didn't know how to help Anakin. But as it turned out, Anakin quickly found a distraction. And this distraction was the situation on Mandalore, where Ahsoka Tano had gone to capture Darth Maul. And so, when Anakin told Obi-Wan that he is going to help Ahsoka on Mandalore, Obi-Wan did not protest. In fact, Obi-Wan went along with Anakin. Not because he felt Anakin couldn't deal with it himself, but because he wanted to keep an eye on Anakin, given the mental state his former apprentice was in. And so, in the end, the two Jedi decided to go to Mandalore. And now, turning our attention to Mandalore, as all this was happening, Ahsoka, along with Bo-Katan Kryze, were close to confronting Maul. And in the meanwhile, Maul senses that Sidious had died, something which Maul believed was nearly impossible. But his senses cannot be lying, Maul told himself. Sidious had somehow died. And having realized this, Maul also figures that the Jedi of the Republic are now unlikely to be destroyed, at least not anytime soon. And so, given these new developments, Maul augments his plan from just wanting to kill Anakin to wanting to get out of there. There was no...
We're not just a lumber company, we're a family.
No point in trying to kill Anakin now, because Anakin was no longer going to be anyone's prized pupil. Well, maybe Obi-Wan's, but Maul didn't care about that. Point is, at this point, escape became Maul's primary goal. But unfortunately, things wouldn't go so easy for Darth Maul. That is because, as Maul was thinking about all this, Ahsoka Tano received a transmission from her old master. Ahsoka then answered the transmission. "Master," she said, as the figure of Anakin Skywalker flickered to life. Ahsoka noticed that Anakin's usual confidence was
Skywalker.
replaced by a look of deep weariness, his eyes shadowed by something. "Anakin, what happened?" Ahsoka asked in a concerned tone. Anakin paused, a heavy sigh escaping him before he began, his voice tinged with a profound sadness. "Ahsoka, the Chancellor, is dead. Dooku killed him. We failed." Ahsoka was shocked upon hearing this. She, Palpatine, Supreme Chancellor of the Republic, had seemed invincible at times, and yet he was now dead. But Ahsoka's shock quickly gave way to her concern towards her former master. Ahsoka realized that Anakin blamed himself for the death of Palpatine, who Anakin had looked up to as a father almost. "Anakin, it wasn't your fault. The moment the Chancellor was taken, his life was at risk. You weren't on Coruscant at the time. There was nothing you could have done," Ahsoka said in a gentle tone. After having listened to Ahsoka, Anakin continued, Ahsoka's words having little effect on him. "Grievous is dead, Ahsoka. I killed him." Ahsoka felt as though Anakin's mind was somewhere else as he said this, but quickly, as Ahsoka noted, Anakin brought his mind back into focus. "Ahsoka, we are coming to Mandalore with help. We cannot let Maul get away. He could help us track down Dooku." In response, Ahsoka too, sensing as how Anakin didn't call her for a therapy session, focused on the immediate issue at hand. In a firm yet supportive tone, Ahsoka responded, "Thank you, Anakin." Knowing Maul, he might be planning to use this chaos to his advantage. Following this, Anakin and Ahsoka talked some more, mainly about strategies on how to confront Maul, and then the transmission ended, with a mutual understanding of the challenges that laid ahead.
Bring Maul
Despite the
back
turmoil and sorrow that had
alive.
befallen him, Anakin and Ahsoka were united in their purpose. Or so Ahsoka felt. So not long after, Anakin and Obi-Wan arrived on Mandalore with the clones, and although Ahsoka wanted to discuss the recent events, they didn't. One of the reasons Anakin was on Mandalore was to clear his mind of the recent events, and Ahsoka sensed this in Anakin. Anyways, not long after, they managed to track Maul's presence to the tunnels beneath the city of Sundari on Mandalore. And having made this discovery, the Jedi and Ahsoka went into the tunnels, where they decided to split up with their clones in an effort to cover more ground, or tunnels. And not long into their search, both Ahsoka and Obi-Wan ran into Maul's Mandalorian super commandos who gave them a tough battle. But in the meantime, Anakin Skywalker's party wasn't ambushed like Obi-Wan and Ahsoka. Instead, Anakin soon felt a presence close by. A dark presence. It was Darth Maul, Anakin realized. The scanners Anakin's clone troopers had with them then picked up motion in the tunnels ahead. But soon the outputs given by the clone scanners started becoming erratic, indicating multiple presences nearby, which led to Anakin's team splitting up even more and Anakin himself choosing to rely on his senses rather than the computers to reach the presence he had felt. And this, of course, is what Darth Maul wanted, to try and single out Anakin as much as he could. And in that, Maul became successful. Anakin eventually ended up with a few clones in a corner of the tunnels, at which point, Maul, with no warning at all, attacked Anakin, with Anakin's quick reflexes saving him. Was he just half a second late, Maul would have taken his head, Anakin realized. Following this, Anakin's clones attacked Maul, with the Sith blocking every single blaster bolt that came his way with ease, sending them right back to where they came from. The clones put up a good fight, but they were no match for Maul's fury, and soon enough, Anakin found himself alone in fighting the Sith Lord. And so the duel between Skywalker and Maul began, with no interruptions now. The air hung heavy with the metallic scent of blaster fire, and each clash of lightsaber against lightsaber reverberated through the cramped passageways, magnifying the tension that surged as intensely as plasma through the air. Across from Anakin, Maul was a whirlwind of crimson fury. His double-bladed saber spun in a hypnotic dance, weaving a deadly net of strikes that snapped and crackled around Anakin. Anakin parried and lunged, his own blade a blur of blue as he struggled to match the Sith's relentless assault. Anakin could feel the strain etching lines on his brow, the fatigue gnawing at his muscles. Maul was older, yes, but the years seemed to have only honed his ferocity, leaving him a snake as agile and venomous as ever. Sweating in his eyes, Anakin pushed Maul back with a flurry of Form 5 attacks. Each blow was deliberate, calculated, but Maul seemed to anticipate them effortlessly, deflecting them with a mocking twist of his wrists. Frustration flared hot and bitter in Anakin's gut. He needed to be faster, stronger, more something. As the duel wore on, the environment played its part, forcing the fighters into even more closer quarters. The air was thick with the scent of ozone, and it was here, backed into a corner with seemingly no way out, that Anakin's thoughts turned dark. his mind went elsewhere. She remembered his failure to save his mother, his failure to protect Palpatine, and the weight of these memories fueled a terrifying transformation. Tapping into his anger, his fear, and his overwhelming sense of loss, Anakin began to fight back with a ferocity that matched, then surpassed Maul's own. Anakin's style shifted, becoming more aggressive, more unpredictable. Anakin started to incorporate elements of Form 7 in his fighting, mirroring Maul's own use of Juyo, but with a raw power that was uniquely his own. The duel became a storm of light, each strike from Anakin fueled by a blend of his profound skill and the dark emotions he had begun to embrace. The sound of their battle was deafening, the clash of their sabers a constant thunder in the confined space. Maul, sensing the shift in Anakin's approach, realized that his opponent was no longer fighting as a Jedi, but as something else, something more dangerous. Despite his own mastery of the dark side, Maul understood that Anakin's potential to tap into these depths of power might surpass his own. Maul understood why Sidious wanted Anakin as his apprentice. Maul's confidence then began to waver. He looked for any opportunity to turn the tide, to find a weakness to exploit. But Anakin's onslaught was relentless, driven by a torrent of emotions that Maul could neither comprehend nor counter. In a final, desperate move, Maul employed a tactic of distraction, using the Force to collapse part of the ceiling tunnel, creating a barrier between himself and Anakin. Seizing this moment of distraction, Maul retreated, disappearing into the maze of tunnels, leaving Anakin amidst the dust and rubble, his lightsaber still humming with energy. In the meantime, Obi-Wan and Ahsoka, with the help of their clone troopers, managed to fight off the Mandalorians that were attacking them, following which Obi-Wan attempted to contact Anakin through his comlink, but Anakin could not be reached. Following which Obi-Wan contacted Ahsoka, prompting Ahsoka to go looking for Anakin as Obi-Wan continued their search in the tunnels. And so Ahsoka, with her clones in tow, hurried towards where Anakin's comlink was last detected. And this eventually led the Togruta to a dark section of the tunnels where the air hung heavy with the scent of burned ozone. A telltale sign of a recent lightsaber battle, Ahsoka thought, and moments later, confirming her suspicions, Anakin emerged from the dark, only the glow of his blue lightsaber visible at first, with the young man that gripped it walking into the light soon after. Before the concerned Ahsoka could say anything, Anakin began. "Maul's here," he said, pointing to where Maul ran, and then quickly detailing to Ahsoka what had happened. The clones then prepared to clear up the blocked tunnel, but before they could even begin, Anakin sent out a powerful Force push towards the rubble and cleared the path, following which Ahsoka, Anakin, and the clones made their way forward. Anakin and Ahsoka, guided by the Force, pursued the faint trail left by Maul through the labyrinthine tunnels beneath Sundari. Anakin led the way, his connection to the Force acting as their compass, directing them through the winding, darkened paths. Ahsoka, following closely behind, couldn't help but notice the immense determination emanating from her master. His focus was razor-sharp, yet beneath that she sensed a tumult of emotions roiling within him, anger, guilt, and a relentless drive that bordered on obsession. She observed Anakin's tight grip on his lightsaber, the light tension on his shoulders, indicative of his stressed mental state. Yet, recognizing the urgency of the mission, Ahsoka quickly set aside her concerns for the moment. Following Anakin's Force-guided steps which were leading them closer to Maul, they navigated the tunnels. Ahsoka kept close, her senses alert for any signs of danger. The air vibrated with an unseen tension, fueled by the unspoken emotions swirling around them. And finally, after what felt like an eternity in the oppressive darkness of the tunnels, they reached an opening. The transition from the dimly lit tunnel to the slightly brighter chamber was abrupt, and no sooner had they stepped out into the open space than blaster bolts streaked towards them from multiple directions. The Mandalorian super commandos had lain in wait, ready to defend their leader or at least delay his pursuers. Anakin reacted instantly, his lightsaber moving in a blur to deflect the incoming fire. Beside him, Ahsoka mirrored his movements, her dual blades a whirlwind of light. But as the intensity of the firefight increased, Anakin did something unexpected. Drawing deeply on his swirling emotions, the same dark, powerful feelings that had surged through him during his duel with Maul, he stretched out his hands, focusing intently, and in response, the blaster bolts suddenly halted mid-air, frozen by the Force. Anakin, his eyes burning with a fierce intensity, held them suspended, a display of power that left even the Mandalorians momentarily stunned. Ahsoka watched, a mixture of awe and concern flashing through her mind. She had seen Anakin display incredible feats of power before, but the raw emotion driving him now was something else, something more. And then, with a forceful sweep of his arm, Anakin sent the blaster bolts careening back towards their shooters, causing chaos among the Mandalorian ranks. Seizing this opportunity, Anakin and Ahsoka charged forward, their lightsabers cutting through the disoriented Mandalorian defenders with precision and
Good
speed.
Lord Vader.
The determination and raw power Anakin was displaying was both inspiring and frightening. His use of the Force in such a manner, driven by emotion, bordered on the very edge of what the Jedi taught against. Yet, there was no time to dwell on these thoughts. Now when Maul was so close.
I'll be back in a minute. I'm back. Let's continue this.
And their objective within reach. Moments later, emerging from the confines of the tunnels, Anakin and Ahsoka were greeted by the harsh glare of Mandalore's moons, casting long shadows across the battlefield. Before them, Maul, flanked by some of his Mandalorian super commandos, had boarded a shuttle in what looked like an attempt to get out of the place as soon as he could. It seemed for a moment that they had arrived a little too late to intercept Maul. However, Anakin, fueled by relentless determination and the raw power of the Force, was not prepared to concede defeat. With fierce concentration that bordered on the edge of his control, Anakin reached out with the Force, his arm extended towards the ascending shuttle that Maul and his commandos were on. The night air vibrated with energy as the shuttle halted mid-air, its engines howling in protest. And then, with a decisive pull, Anakin dragged the shuttle back to the ground, its forced descent kicking up clouds of debris and dust. But Anakin, continuing his exertion, focused more intensely, his fingers twitching as though physically grasping the ship's exterior. Then, layer by layer, the shuttle's outer shell began to peel away under the inexorable pull of Anakin's will, revealing the startled faces of those inside. The Mandalorian commandos who were inside, realizing their dire situation, scrambled to engage, but the clone troopers under Ahsoka's swift commands moved quickly to neutralize the threat. And while the clones and Ahsoka dealt with the Mandalorian commandos, Anakin's gaze fixed on Maul, who, recognizing the futility of flight, ignited his own twin-bladed saber and stepped forward to confront Anakin in combat once more. As the dust settled around the dismantled Mandalorian shuttle, the night air was pierced by the hum of lightsabers reigniting for a confrontation that would be etched into the memories of all who witnessed it. Anakin Skywalker stood across from Maul, the latter's face a mask of determination and rage, his twin-bladed saber casting a sinister glow. Despite their earlier duel, Maul's resolve hadn't faltered. If anything, the loss to Anakin had ignited a deeper, more primal urge to survive and to prove his superiority to himself more than anyone else. And Anakin, fueled by a maelstrom of emotions and a relentless drive to end this threat, faced Maul with a cold, unwavering focus. The duel then commenced with a ferocity that had all onlookers on edge. Maul, aware that brute strength would not grant him victory over Skywalker, resorted to leveraging his agility and the dual blades of his saber to create a web of attacks designed to disorient and wear down his opponent. Maul's mind was a fortress of focus, every strike and maneuver aimed at exploiting any hint of weakness in Anakin's defenses. Anakin, however, was a tempest, his style a blend of aggressive Form 5 and the unpredictable elements of Form 7, mirroring his internal turmoil. Each attack was not just a physical action, but an expression of his inner conflict, his anger, his fear, and his overwhelming desire to protect those he cared about. And so, as the duel progressed, it became a dance of death, each participant pushing the other to their limits. Maul's strategy of disorientation and rapid strikes found little purchase against Anakin's heroic power and heightened reflexes, and as the duel progressed further, Anakin started to gain the upper hand. His blades moved with deadly precision, cutting through Maul's defenses with an efficiency that spoke of his growing mastery and the dark edge to his power. In a moment of calculated aggression, Anakin managed to sever one of Maul's arm, the severed limb falling away as Maul's scream echoed through the night. But Maul, ever resilient and driven by a will to survive that had seen him through countless battles and betrayals, refused to yield. Even as he staggered back, pain and shock registered on his features, he continued to fight, his remaining arm maneuvering his lightsaber in a desperate bid to fend off Anakin's relentless assault. And Anakin, sensing the end was near, intensified his attack, his movements a blur as he pressed his advantage. And then, in a final, decisive exchange, he disabled Maul, severing the Sith's two cybernetic legs. Maul collapsed, defeated but still alive, his breathing heavy, his eyes burning with hatred and defeat. But before Anakin could deliver the finishing blow to Maul, a voice pierced the tension. "Anakin!" Obi-Wan Kenobi's shout echoed across the battlefield, filled with urgency and a hint of fear. Anakin paused, his lightsaber poised for a killing strike, as he turned to see Obi-Wan rushing towards him. After Obi-Wan's arrival, Anakin glanced down at the defeated Maul, his anger dissipating as he deactivated his blue saber. The immediate danger now neutralized, Maul was quickly stunned by the thorns, rendered unconscious, and effectively taken prisoner. In the aftermath, as the tension of the duel lifted, Obi-Wan approached Anakin, his brow creased with concern.
Hey guys, here's 3 perfect fits for me and my Z that I love.
Parts guaranteed to fit? Check.
With eBay.
Anakin, are you alright? Obi-Wan asked, his voice
I'm tired of ads every single time. Really? Why?
carrying a mixture of worry and relief. Anakin, still processing the flood of emotions and the adrenaline rush from the battle, simply nodded, his gaze distant. I'm fine, Anakin said, his voice carrying a note of finality that suggested he wasn't open to discussing his feelings at that moment. And so, without another word, Anakin turned and walked away, leaving Obi-Wan and Ahsoka exchanging worried looks behind him. Obi-Wan's gaze lingered on Anakin's retreating figure, a silent wall forming in his heart to keep a closer watch on his former apprentice, to ensure that this brush Anakin had with the darkness would not lead him astray. So shortly after all this, after securing Bo-Katan's position as Regent of Mandalore, the two Jedi and Ahsoka returned to Coruscant with Maul. Anakin didn't speak much during the journey back, his mind dwelling on the many recent events. After Ahsoka having sensed what Anakin was going through, she felt a strong desire to help the man she thought of as a brother. And to do that, Ahsoka decided that, if possible, she would rejoin the Order. This would allow her to stay close to Anakin, and also by this point, Ahsoka had come to believe that she belonged with the Jedi, that it was her destiny. So, soon enough, they were all back on Coruscant. And after Maul was transported to a high-security prison in a Mandalorian cage still, Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Ahsoka met before the Jedi High Council to deliver a report on the whole thing. Anakin did not want to be there, but Obi-Wan insisted, and beyond that, Anakin wanted to make sure that the Council knew of the role Ahsoka played in capturing Maul. But without Anakin having to say anything, Master Yoda would tell Ahsoka that she did well on Mandalore and that the Jedi Order is indebted to her. And following this, Yoda would also say that the Order could use more of her help, to which Ahsoka would say that she would be delighted to help. So Ahsoka rejoined the Order, but as Anakin's Padawan still. So side note, in the original timeline, had the Order not fallen by the time Ahsoka caught Maul, Ahsoka would have been made a Jedi Knight for defeating a Sith Lord in combat. That is how Obi-Wan attained knighthood, for defeating Maul and Naboo. But in this timeline, since it wasn't her directly defeating Maul, Ahsoka would still need to pass the trials to become a Jedi Knight, so for the time being, she would only be able to rejoin as Anakin's apprentice. But anyways, after meeting with the Jedi Council, Anakin would finally head on over to Padme's apartment in the Senate District on Coruscant. Which is when Padme would finally tell him about her pregnancy. And Anakin would react to this news the same way he did in the original timeline, but unlike in the original timeline, here, Anakin wouldn't get any terrible visions. The cause of all those visions was long dead by this point. And now, let us turn our attention to Darth Tyrannus or Count Dooku. So, after escaping the Invisible Hand, leaving Grievous to die, the Count went to his castle on Sereno. And once there, he began thinking about the moves he could now make. Everything involving Order 66 was now pointless to dwell on because only the Supreme Chancellor of the Republic could execute it, and Bail Organa of Alderaan, who was most likely to succeed Palpatine, would have no interest in killing the Jedi, Dooku realized. He could keep the war going, but again, with Palpatine gone, the grand plan of the Sith had failed, and the war orchestrated to fulfill said plan was also pointless at this point. And so, after having considered his position well, Dooku arrived at a decision on what to do next. And what he needed to do was, well, quite a few things, but the first step was to get in touch with the Jedi High Council. So, a few days after the events on Mandalore, a transmission from Sereno was received by the Jedi Council, and it was of course from the Count of Sereno, Count Dooku. In this transmission, Dooku invited the Jedi High Council to Sereno for negotiations. Dooku would insist that only the Jedi High Council members are welcome. Master Kenobi would accuse Dooku of trying to trap them, to which Dooku would argue that that is not the case. And just to convince the Jedi, Dooku would agree to have this meeting or negotiation take place on neutral grounds, on a moon. So side note, this neutral moon where Dooku would meet with the Jedi High Council would be the same moon featured in the very first episode of the Clone Wars, where Yoda goes on a clandestine meeting with the representatives of a system. But anyways, the terms were accepted, and soon enough, the Masters, Yoda, Mace, and Kenobi were on the moon, ready for the count. Anakin, despite wanting to be there, was convinced otherwise by Obi-Wan. And Anakin too eventually understood that him being near Count Dooku wouldn't really help the negotiations stay negotiations. Anyways, soon after the Masters had arrived, Count Dooku himself showed up on the moon. To ensure their safety, each party had their respective armadas on standby in the atmosphere of the moon, and then the meeting began. What I'm about to share with you might be difficult for you to believe. Dooku began, not wasting time on salutations. No one spoke in response, allowing Dooku to say whatever he wanted to say. Do you remember what I told you on Geonosis all those years ago, Obi-Wan? Dooku asked. I do, along with the other events on that day, Obi-Wan responded. What I told you was true. Many senators were under the influence of Darth Sidious, but I didn't give you all the details, Obi-Wan. You see, Darth Sidious was not in the shadows manipulating everyone. Instead, he was in the light. Confusion appeared on the faces of Mace and Kenobi as Dooku continued. Darth Sidious was none other than Sheev Palpatine, the former leader of the Republic, Dooku said, his gaze directed at Yoda. There was a long silence, with a look of disbelief appearing on the faces of all three masters. What proof do you bring, Dooku? Yoda asked. I have hollow recordings of my many meetings with Palpatine or Sidious on both Coruscant and Sereno. I know that Palpatine's master was a Mun by the name of Higo Damask or Darth Plagueis, and if you don't believe me, let me go over Sidious's grand plan. The Jedi listened. The clone troopers who so valiantly served the Republic, each of them have a biological chip implanted into their brains that will force them to carry out certain orders. One such order is Order 66, which would force them to kill every Jedi they can find, Dooku said. That's impossible, Mace retorted. Please, Master Windu, examine their heads. You will find your proof. How do you know this, Dooku? Yoda asked his former apprentice. Because, Master, I oversaw the creation of the clone army and the chips myself. This was Sidious's grand plan. Suddenly, the minds of both Mace and Kenobi went to the thousands of clones right above them. And sensing this concern, Dooku spoke again, his gaze now directed towards Mace and Kenobi. I wouldn't worry, my friends. The order could only be executed by the Supreme Chancellor of the Republic. You are safe, at least for now. Betray your master, you did, Dooku. Why? For a short moment, Dooku wondered if Yoda was referring to himself, but realizing what Yoda was asking, Dooku responded. Betrayal is in the blood of every Sith. Sidious felt he had no use for me and wanted to dispose of me, but I saw it, and now Sidious floats dead in space. The discussions then continued with Dooku revealing all he knew of Sidious's plan and offering up solid proof on Palpatine's dual identity. In the end, Yoda asked Dooku what he wanted, as he wouldn't have called this meeting just to reveal all this. The Separatists will not be rejoining the corrupt Republic, but the conflict no longer serves a purpose, and I wish for it to end, Dooku told Yoda. And so, in the days following this meeting, many things happened. The Clone Wars ended, but the Separatists remained separated, with Sereno as its new capital and Dooku as its leader. The clone troopers were examined, like Dooku said, and upon this examinations their biochips were found, following which a galaxy-wide operation followed, where the chips were removed from the clones. So quick side note, the Jedi obviously knew about the biochips due to the incident with Fives, but what they didn't know was about Order 66. But to test if what Dooku said about Order 66 was true, all the Jedi had to do was ask the new Chancellor to tell any random clone to execute Order 66, and when they did so with Captain Rex, the Jedi got all the proof they needed when Captain Rex, after hesitating for a few moments, tried to attack Anakin. And as for who the new Chancellor was, well, that takes us to the next event that happened. Organa was elected Chancellor, a decision that made many, including the Jedi, very happy. And then, the truth about Palpatine was also revealed to the Senate. The evidence Dooku provided and Maul's testimony helping in this regard. And finally, a little while after this, Luke and Leia were born on Naboo, where, like Padme wanted, Anakin and Padme had gone. But Anakin and Padme would not turn over Luke and Leia to the Jedi, because in this timeline, the Jedi Council still forbade attachments, and neither Anakin nor Padme wanted to abandon their children, so Luke and Leia grew up in luxury on Naboo. And as they got older, Anakin instructed them in the ways of the Force. And eventually, even later, Luke and Leia, being Anakin's children, would be acknowledged by both Ahsoka and Obi-Wan. They would have always known it, but it would have taken some time for the three to stop pretending that this wasn't a secret. And so in the end, at least for the time being, there was peace in the galaxy. But Count Dooku on Sereno still remained in control of many systems in the galaxy, and he was a Sith, and he eventually looked for apprentices. And so, slowly but surely, the seeds of a new Sith empire were sown. But all out conflict wouldn't happen for at least a few centuries at least. The Sith Empire had to form. Anyways, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, and if you feel like supporting the channel, and if you have the time, do check out my Patreon, where for $1 or more you can get early access to videos and access to exclusive content, which wouldn't be shown on the main channel for, I guess, months. Anyways, goodbye. Have a good day and stay hydrated, my friends.
What are you doing, John? John. Who are you talking to?
Don't worry about it. She's not talking to you or you know about it.
Alright, that's it. And again, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. If you want to see more reactions like this in the future. And Wisno channel, the channel for the Wisno video will be in the description below. If you want to watch the Wisno video for yourself, the channel will be in the description below. And there you go. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share to see more reactions in the future as well. And I'll see you next time. Bye.